So the DHS officially partially shuts down because of the lack of funding, because of the Democrats. Um, and what this means is it's not a full government shutdown. It's not a shutdown where, all services will be, thrown out, but it does mean some things will be affected, and we'll talk about that. So first, what continues would be over 90% of DHS employees will still keep working, since most roles are necessary and deemed necessary for, protecting property, life, national security, and law enforcement. But a lot of people will work without pay. Um, and so this is the big thing. ICE and immigration enforcement and border enforcement. That is not going to get affected. That's not going to get affected that much at all. Um, because really thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that Trump passed in 2025, which is, by the way, amazing bill, incredibly beautiful. Um, so Democrats are trying to stop the funding from to the DHS for the main reason of ICE and Border Patrol reform enforcement. And yet, the politicians, forget about the Democrats who blindly follow the Democrat politicians' lies and all of that. We're talking about the Democrat politicians, the people in Congress, okay, the people in Congress and the Senate. They know that ICE will not be affected as much as really, like, for example, FEMA. FEMA is important, and then Democrats are throwing that away. The politicians are throwing that away in order to stop ICE, even though ICE will not be affected as much. So the thing is ICE, but ICE still will continue to have large operations. The Big Beautiful Bill included $75 billion for ICE and $64 billion for CBP. Deportations and Border Patrol will enforce priorities roll on with. So, deportations, Border Patrol, and enforcement priorities will keep going without any interruption, really. So, out of all these things, ICE and Border Patrol will not be affected at all. All of the other things like TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, all of these things will have more effect, will get affected more by this decision by the Democrats instead of ICE and CBP, which is ridiculous. It's insane. Okay? And that really shows, are they doing this for ICE? Are they doing it for immigrants as they say, which they're really not? Um or are they just saying this just to get a kick out of it and try to, shove it in Trump's face? We're stopping DHS. Really, you're stopping Department of Homeland Security? Do you hear yourself? Department of Homeland Security. Really? You want to stop Homeland Security for ICE and Border Patrol, which is the thing that really doesn't get affected at all from this lack of funding. What what insanity is that? Okay, and TSA, about 95% of TSA workers will stay, but longer lines will develop, probably will develop, and a lot of people won't be paid for work. Um, Passengers and cargo processing continues. Coast Guard, national security missions will continue, though some might be funded separately. Secret Service will continue. FEMA will keep happening, but there's a little bit nuance to that, which we'll get into. And basically, other central law enforcement, cybersecurity, and infrastructure protection, all of those will be continued. But what is going to get stopped or affected would be, for example, TSA, like we said before, longer wait times, longer lines. Unpaid workers will maybe will start going on strikes and stuff. FEMA, uh, they will. So new grant processing, hazard mitigation approvals, training classes, and non-emergency preparedness activities will stop, and disaster coordination could slow if prolonged. Coast Guard non-critical missions will not continue for Coast Guard, um, which is obviously not the best because non-critical missions are still important because the smaller things add up. Um, so that's one thing the Democrats are stopping. Immigration services. So Democrats say they love immigrants. They love immigrants, especially illegal immigrants. But let's say legal immigrants. Immigration services, they will get paused or they'll significantly delay more. Okay, so verifying and visas and all of those things, they will get halted or they'll significantly slow down. So they're slowing the process for immigration, which is obviously it's against of what Democrats are claiming they care about, which is immigration. And yet they're stopping the immigration. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? Other divisions such as forensics training, some parts of Secret Service, like mail screening and flood insurance policy renewals, and other things like that, will get delayed or unpaid. And some essential services could be delayed on top of those other things. Um, Obviously, that's not a good thing. Especially, like, it still wouldn't make sense if ICE would have been affected by this, which they're not getting affected. Border Patrol and ICE aren't getting affected by this. But even if they were, it it doesn't like it doesn't make sense at all. It does not make sense. If even though ICE is getting funded still in spite of the partial DHS shutdown, Democrats are still adamant on closing the DHS. Why? Why? Especially when it stops the important things that they claim to care about, like immigration. It stops legal immigration. What is wrong with them? They've gone insane, obviously, but what kind? They're going against their own values that they claim to care about. How is that defensible by any means? There's no way any Democrat can logically and truthfully defend what the politicians are doing. There's no way. The only Democrat in the legislature in the Senate, let's say, that has any common sense is John Fetterman. He won't vote for it because he knows he's not falling for this insanity that his party is doing. John Fetterman's not doing that. That's why I have respect for John Fetterman. I disagree with some stuff, a lot of stuff that he says, but he's really a voice of reason in the Democrat Party. More Democrats should be like him. All right. And what it's hypocrisy. It's multiple things stacked on top. It's hypocrisy. It's insanity. It's lying. It's lack of awareness of what they even say their actions are and what their policies are. Like nothing they say is consistent. Nothing they do is consistent or is matching up with each other. Nothing. It's just a ridiculous, chaotic, uh, un-American disaster. That's what the Democrat Party is. They're all incredibly ignorant and incoherent to the point where what they say has zero value. You rather run your own off. You rather go build a company in that's worth like $100 billion in the time frame that Democrats will stand in the in the Senate floor to filibuster something that's not even important and in to the point of being against rights or anything. It's amazing. It's incredible, really. It's incredible how idiotic it is. I mean, I'm speechless because it's like I'm trying to think of I'm trying to put myself in a Democrat's shoes, which would be very small, by the way. Um, I'm trying to figure out a way to actually defend Democrats. There's not a way you can defend what they're trying to do. The zero. If I was a Democrat, I'd be like, what are you doing? Your point is to stop ICE, and you're for the reason of supposedly immigration right violation, which is not happening, but supposedly it's to care about immigrants, and let's say legal immigrants, okay, lawful immigrants, and yet they're doing this in spite of ICE and Border Patrol not being affected at all. But the process of applying for immigration status will be delayed and halted. That's insanity. They don't care about immigrants. They just care about their votes and their stupid political agendas. Forget your stupid political agendas. Who cares? You're going against your own values of immigration. You're insane. What is wrong with you? I mean, that what I mean, I and really, I know at least 70 to 80% of Democrats agree with me because a lot of them have voted actually for Joe Biden and Kamala, Joe Biden and Obama and Hillary. They voted for these people, these Democrats, and they're probably slowly but surely going towards the Republican side, not because they are going to the right, because their side is going more to the left, and the line and the middle ground of what is Republican and left leaning goes towards the Republican side because we're the only voice of reason. It's not even it's not even a logical. There's nothing logical about siding with the Democrats on this one. I know 70 to 80% of Democrats agree with me because they're not so far gone to the point where they're they're blindly following these Democrat politicians who are lying to them and blatantly saying lies. And to those Democrats who are agreeing with me and agreeing with people who are saying the same things I am, I'm I give them great credit because they're not going to stand by and be like, okay, now you're making Democrats look I'm a Democrat, but you're making me look bad, even though I'm on your side. You're making me look bad, and that's and Democrat politicians. I know for a fact they are so out of reach with their constituents. They're so out of reach with their constituents. Their constituents and them have zero connection, right? Like for example, for the Save Act, for example, 80% of 70% of 70-80% of Democrats agree with the Save Act, and yet all of the Democrats except John Fetterman, hopefully, has voted no on the Save Act. What? How does that represent their constituents? They care about democracy? That's not democracy. They're literally going against the people who voted for them. Even though we're a republic, we're a constitutional republic, they claim to care about democracy. What democracy is that they should vote as if what constitutional republic is that they should vote as, the constituents who voted for them would vote as. But if you really want to be a democracy where everyone should vote, you should act like it. Act like it. Right? Which, if Democrats would vote on the Save Act as if it was a democracy, it would pass. If only the Democrats voted for it, it would pass. If only the Republicans voted for it, it would definitely pass. If both voted for it, it would pass. So it's obviously bipartisan, but the Democrat politicians don't want to do that. They don't want to be inclusive. They don't want to. They don't want to represent their constituents who voted for them. Which so at that point, why are they even getting paid? At that point, we should stop paying the Democrats because they're stopping FEMA. They're stopping the process for immigration, and they're not. And yet they're still getting paid, claiming they care about immigration. That's insanity. It's hypocrisy, and they're utterly idiotic and stupid. AOC and Gavin Newsom were just invited to the Munich Security Conference for some reason, and people are wondering if they're going to run for a presidential race in 2028. And if you really want to see how great candidates they are, you should just listen to AOC's answers on whether we should defend Taiwan against China. And her answer was just a bunch of ums and ems and a bunch of stuttering for literally 20 seconds before saying, this is a long-withstanding policy. Like, what kind of incoherent nonsense is that? She sounded like a child trying to get out of a lie, which is really what it was. And if Democrats think that's great foreign policy, fine, but they should be ready for a disastrous administration. In any case, she's really the reason for instructions on her shampoo bottle, because otherwise she would drink it, saying that it'll clean her hair from the inside. If you really want to see what she was saying, here's what it is.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very long-standing policy.
What? What does that even? That doesn't make sense. It's incoherent word salad. It's like we saw in the Biden administration with Kamala Harris and all these other fake politicians, just so we can shut up and let AOC do her corruption with all of her other Democrat friends. And Gavin Newsom was there. And what was Gavin Newsom doing? Gavin Newsom was blaming Trump like he always does, saying that, okay, Donald Trump is temporary, California's leadership is not. Unless Gavin Newsom is hinting that he wants to be a dictator, he should know that his administration is also temporary. So unless Gavin Newsom is secretly admitting he wants to be a dictator, which really that would be pretty hypocritical because he thinks Trump is a dictator, he's again saying a bunch of word salad nonsense. Of course Trump's presidency is temporary. So is yours, Gavin. You imbecile. You don't even have a successful policy in, for example, fire. Like, you try to blame Trump for all the fires in the Palisades when you vetoed a bill that would give firefighters a raise. How hypocritical is that? It's incredibly hypocritical. And Gavin Newsom was praising, according to Bricks News on X, he was praising China and saying, look at their GDP growth last year. You should check out what California has been going through. California lost $1 trillion in wealth due to billionaires leaving the state due to Gavin Newsom's communist tax policy. And of course, Gavin Newsom would compliment China because he cleaned up the streets in San Francisco for China, but not his own citizens. He doesn't care about California. He only cares about foreign countries and communists, but not his own Californian citizens and residents, or even illegals, right? Wouldn't he loves illegals so much. Why wouldn't he want to clean up the streets for illegals, right? Not even illegals. He wouldn't do it for anyone. But when China came to San Francisco, he would clean it up. You should keep it clean all the time because it's an embarrassment. China looks at this and says, like, what kind of nonsense is going on with Gavin Newsom? Great, he cleaned up the streets for me. That's what China would say. But then he's doing a horrible job for his civilians, for his citizens, for Californians. It's an embarrassment for California, showing China and all of the other countries that really California, the leadership, is extremely weak and ignorant and genuinely has the lowest of interest of any state about their citizens. he like what kind of I don't get what does he get off on lying so much? There's how does it even compute to him that lying this much won't get him into some type of scandal with, well, actually, he's gone to the scandals in terms of lying and cheating, but that's a different thing. So I don't understand how he doesn't think he's not gonna get caught because lying, because he's obviously caught lying many times. And he said, Trump is a dictator, blah blah blah, but then he really, I think, in his statement, if you really want to go that far, because he does it, he's saying that California's leadership is not temporary, meaning Gavin Newsom's administration isn't temporary, meaning he wants to be a dictator regime. Is that where I'm getting at? I think that's where he's getting at. In any news, the Save America Act now has support from 50 senators. With yesterday, Senator Susan Collins was not in support of it. But now she is, and so Senator John Thune. That would be great, except for the fact that the filibuster is there, and with the filibuster you need 60 votes. So John Thune needs to nuke the filibuster once and for all, so that 50 senators are already there. John Fetterman, I hope that he will vote for the SAVE Act, because I think he's the only sane Democrat that's actually really there, at least in the legislature. And I hope he will do it too. And then, if not, there's 50 senators, and J.D. Vance will be the tiebreaker vote, and it can be passed. Which, by the way, 80% of Americans, including Democrats, majority of Democrats support it. They want the SAVE Act to be passed. So, really, Senator John Thune, he needs to nuke the filibuster. If you want to save democracy, in two ways. There's two ways you can save, quote-unquote, democracy, even though we're a constitutional republic. But here's how we can save democracy, which is that passing the SAVE Act, which protects the votes, which is obviously part of democracy, protects the votes, not allowing fake voters and illegal voters, to place votes and, influence our elections in a false way. And by correctly representing America, which is that 80% of people, Americans, support the SAVE Act, and yet the politicians in Congress and in the Senate do not want to do that, and they do not represent their constituents very well. So if you want to really save democracy, you really want to do two things. You want to nuke the filibuster, and you also want to pass the SAVE Act, because it's a bipartisan thing. There's no debate about it. And there's this post on X that says that replying to a representative trying to note that 213 Democrats use their congressional voter ID to vote no on a voter ID bill. Now, this post on X says, notable that all 431 Congress people did not use their passport to vote, which is what your bill requires. No, I don't know where these people get off on lying and misleading, but you're not required to use your passport to vote. It's an optional thing, so it's either you use your passport or you can use birth certificate and photo ID. In the case of married women, they can use their marriage certificate, but passport is not a requirement. It's either or. So again, another lie, what people keep debunking. And here, a post from the Washington Post. The Trump administration spent more than $40 million last year to send hundreds of migrants, they don't want to say illegal immigrants and migrants because they're fake news, to at least 24 countries they were from. A tactic Senate Democrats described as a costly strategy aimed at sowing fear and intimidation. Okay, so they... this is such a one-sided post, because they say tactic Senate Democrats described as if Senate Democrats are the only voice of truth, which obviously they're not. They're, in fact, the exact opposite of that. And they're also ignoring the fact is does not letting tens of millions of illegal immigrants, undocumented, into the country, does that not cost money? But really, it costs welfare, right? Which the taxpayers pay for, which is even more taxes, more than $40 million in total. Okay, and it costs people their jobs, which causes wage increases. It costs home prices to go up because these illegals go and buy homes, taking away from legal immigrants who have visas, green cards, and who became citizens. So it's bad for legal immigrants too, and home prices go up, which is more expensive, obviously. And then really the cleanup of homelessness, which by the way, a lot of really the majority of illegals who are here, they're homeless because they thought they would have a better life here, but since they're undocumented, they're constantly hiding from the federal government so they won't get deported, which makes them go into hiding, which a lot of times makes them homeless, and that causes obviously more welfare as well on top of other things. So, and that costs more than, guarantee you, it costs more than $40 million to take care of tens of millions of illegal immigrants than it is to deport all of them, right? Um, and by the way, it's not like we're also paying the illegals to deport themselves. Like, I don't know what word they're trying to get at. Uh, it's not. It's not. It's not as bad as they're trying to make it seem. It is. It's not bad at all, actually. And they're just ignoring the fact that keeping the illegals in the country and undocumented migrants in the country does cost more than $40 million, obviously. Officials in New York have raised the pride flag again at the city's Stonewall National Monument after it was removed due to a Trump administration policy, according to CBS News. Okay. People are saying, okay, you need the pride flag at government buildings for some reason, because you need to be inclusive. What really putting the pride flag on government properties and really anywhere that instead has an American flag is extremely divisive and uninclusive. It's the opposite of inclusive. It is divisive because you're saying, not the Republicans, not the conservatives, the Democrats are saying LGBTQ people are not represented by the American flag. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what Republicans are saying. That's not what conservatives are saying. That's what Democrats are saying, whether directly or indirectly, by putting the pride flag there beside the American flag, and especially replacing the American flag with it. It is divisive. You have to say, okay, LGBTQ people are included in the American flag if they're Americans. If they're Americans and they're included with the American flag, why do you need a separate type of flag to represent them in? That is divisive. It's the same argument for the Bad Bunny halftime show. If you want to say you want to represent all types of races, you better include all those races in the American flag if they're Americans, right? And obviously, if you're not trying to represent Americans, I don't know why you're even at the NFL halftime show, anyways, because Super Bowl is an American event, part of American culture. It has been for a very, very long time. Um, and another thing, Nick Shirley, great guy, exposes migrant children living in tents in Gavin Newsom's California, according to Breaking 911 on X. In this video, it shows people from Colombia, supposedly, in a tent with their children in it, homeless. That's not a good thing, right? We don't want anyone homeless in, let's say, in California, for example, in the United States or anywhere really, but let's say in California for this case, because homelessness is not a good thing. Generally, it's not a good thing, right? I'm sure that's a widespread opinion, hopefully, right? And I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's an illegal, especially if it's an illegal who was misled like this family was, or it was American citizens and legal immigrants. It doesn't matter who it is. Homelessness is not a good thing, okay? And these people, particularly, I feel bad for. And these are illegals, okay? Illegals, I feel bad for because they were misled by the Biden administration. The Biden administration misled them by saying, "Hey, we'll take care of you all the time, and you can just come here, break into the country, and everything will be fine." That's not how it works, right? Again, this is the same thing that the communists do, all the left-leaning people do. They promise a utopia, which is not the case. It's that's not, especially with their policies. It's not the case. Okay, it's sad because not only these are illegal migrants that came into the country misled, and now they're homeless, probably worse than it was when they were in their country, but they're also bringing their children into that, and their children are experiencing the same thing. That's not a good thing, right? That's not a good thing. And the Biden administration and the Democrats caused this to happen. Okay, and this is homelessness. And by the way, they spent millions, billions of dollars in welfare for these illegals, and yet the illegals are still in here, are still in the state of homelessness. Supposedly, when they're trying to prevent homelessness by also aiding to illegal immigrants who break the law. What? That doesn't even. So they're just saying they're taking care of illegals, but yet the illegals are still homeless on top of the Americans that are homeless too. It doesn't make sense at all. It's a sad thing, right? These people should not be homeless in America. That's it, right? And really, if the Democratic policies and Gavin Newsom policies work, these illegals would not be homeless. They would be maybe at the very least in an apartment, but they're not. And that's the failure of the Democrat policies. The Democrats don't care about these illegals because obviously, if you looked at the video, they don't care about the illegals because they allow them to be homeless, right? And let alone the illegals, they allow Americans to be homeless. They don't care about the Americans. They don't care about the illegals. They care about their votes. And it shows. This video shows. I encourage people to go to this account, or Nick Shirley, and look at it because it's a sad thing. Why would you want? I don't care if they're illegals, especially since they were misled. They were misled illegals. They weren't. They didn't come here knowing that it's a scam. They genuinely thought that they would come here for a better life without any consequence, and yet they're here, with without any support from the government or any government really. Really, I mean, if they chose to self-deport, they would be better off than what the Democrats and Gavin Newsom is doing to them. They self-deport, they'll get $3,000, and they'll get a chance to come back here legally, which gives them a better chance to succeed in America. It's all in all better for them to self-deport and then come here because they get paid to self-deport and then come here legally, which gives them more opportunity. That's the way they should do it. But Democrats and Gavin Newsom don't want that. And it's a sad thing because they're lying to people. They say they care about immigrants. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. If they did, these immigrants wouldn't be homeless.